This is the Cameron Journal Podcast. It's a place where we talk about important things. It's a place where we bring a little slice of the news to you. It's a place where we do important things, have important conversations. It's also things that I like to talk about. My name is Cameron Cowan, and this is the Cameron Journal Podcast. Today on the Cameron Journal Podcast, I am happy to be speaking with Andrew Mellen. He is the author of a book called Calling Bullshit on Busy. He's described as the most organized man in America. And this is going to be a very interesting conversation because I'm sure he has lots of great advice, but I am neurodivergent, so this stuff usually does not apply at all. But I'm sure it will be helpful to lots and lots of people who have trouble managing their time, all this type of thing, and have a neurology that actually is functional. So, welcome, Andrew, to the Cameron Journal Podcast. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm excited to talk to you about this stuff.
Good. Well, why don't we start from the beginning? And why don't you tell us a little bit about your book and why you wrote it?
Sure. I suppose I wrote it for several reasons. One was that so often when I'm working with my own clients, students, one of the main reasons they will put forward for why they are not able to take action is that they're just too busy. And my feeling is, having done this work for a while now, that we either want to do something or we don't want to do something. And we can say that we're too busy, and which isn't to say that people don't have demands on their time. But if we're using busy as the explanation / excuse for why we're not doing something, perhaps we would just be better served by telling the truth and saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want to make the time for it. What I'm already committed to is more important to me than this, so I'm not going to do it. As opposed to, it's like those apologies that are, I'm sorry you feel that way, which is not really an apology.
Yeah.
You know, if you were sorry, then you'd be sorry. And if you're not sorry, then, I mean, I'm an adult, I can take it. Just say that, you know, even it's unfortunate that you feel that way, or we're going to disagree about your feeling state and my responsibility for it. All of those would be closer to the truth than I'm sorry you feel that way. So,
yeah, it's I mean, I get that. I do. I think there are people, you know, where it becomes obvious you're not very high on their priority list, right? Yeah. And it is easier if if you would just say that rather than letting me kind of slowly figure it out over time. And so yeah. I get that. But at the same time, though, don't you also feel like in this day and age, the way society is structured, the mountains of stuff that most people have going on, that we're like, people are excessively busy. Maybe we're just overcommitted. Like, yeah. Is that the moral of the story? Like, maybe we're just overcommitted.
That's one of the 8 deadlies that I talk about in the book, right? Interruption.
Oh, let's get into those. This is good. Sure. Yeah.
So interruptions, overcommitting, poor planning, multitasking, meetings, email, social media, procrastination. So overcommitting is one of them. And again, shiny object syndrome, whatever we want to call it, that is better than this, whatever this is, the thing that you're already committed to that seemed important when you committed to it. And now suddenly, by comparison, perhaps something is sexier, more interesting, more compelling, or it's just distracting you and you are leaning into it because you like novelty, you're overwhelmed, and you have a story that I want something to perk me up, right? Like I don't want to do the same old. And for some of us, the same old is are things that are actually very well aligned with our values and important to us. And some of that is not sexy, right? I mean, childcare is not sexy.
Mm-mm.
Children have demands and they need certain things, and they're not, it's not date night, right? It's getting your
No.
kids to brush their teeth and go to bed, do their homework, be as compliant as you can get them to be, and participate in
Yes.
their own lives and teach them to, to think critically. So I mean, nothing about that is as much fun as shopping for a new pair of shoes.
Yes. I mean, that is, but I think also like, what about, I guess what about things like energy levels? Like that for me is always that's the one that always gets me. There's
Sure.
lots of things I would like to be doing, lots of things I wish I could do. And this has been a theme over the last, I would say, since 2020. So it's been the last 3 years. Um, I just at 30, I was turned 35 almost a month ago. I
Happy
don't have
birthday.
it in, thank you. I don't have it in the tank like I used to. I mean,
Sure.
I used to do fashion produce theater, run a magazine, and go out and see friends, and keep a 4 day a week gym schedule when I was a power lifter, and did strongman competitions and all that stuff. And it was like fine. Like it was great. Nowadays, I can do a third of that, maybe. And I still literally got up this morning, did email, was super tired, and took an hour nap to get ready to do this. I put on my makeup in 5 minutes. Um, so like it's like I feel like part of it is just like I don't know if it's an aging thing or whatever have you, but there's just not the energy resources there used to be. I think
Sure.
that I mean I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, a bad thing, aging thing. I maybe need to seek medical attention, but I feel like that's a big part of the problem is there may be 24 hours, but do I have energy to do things for all of the hours I could be doing things?
Yeah, and I would say that totally. I mean, certainly, the last 3 years have been a shit show for everybody. Which is not to diminish your particular experience of the last 3 years, and we're all reeling from that. And I think, as you've described it, certainly. Uh, the degree to which you have to triage all of the things you could be doing with all of the things that you have the energy for, and being able to prioritize the things that are going to get done, like what must get done, and how are you going to marshal the energy that you have available, is also something that needs to be drilled down into. If you've got your historic to-do list and you've got your current level of energy, those aren't a match. So the
Right.
list of things that you used to do, and the things that you have the energy and the capacity to do today, if they don't match up, you're going to have to go back at that list and figure out what has to be removed completely, what can I do in a different way. Um, a lot of the things that you mentioned, certainly, I mean, the powerlifting and things like that are not something that you can delegate away, right? But some of the other things might be able
Yeah.
to be delegated. They could still happen. They could still happen under your leadership, but you might not need to be doing them in quite the way that you did them, which is, again, that's just a strategy pivot rather than doing it or not doing it.
No, I think that's hugely important. And I say this as someone who likes to touch and be involved in everything going on. I've been in leadership at a couple different organizations. I am the leader who will vacuum the rug because I want to be that close to what's going on.
Right.
I have realized in time, in the wisdom of getting older, that's actually a really terrible way to lead people.
Oh.
It's not always that good necessarily to be that close. You have to really let people go out and do their jobs and trust them to do it. And if you don't trust them to do it, you don't have a task problem, you have a staffing problem. And so separate issues. And so
Yes.
I get that. And I was telling someone, I said the first thing I'm going to get rid of as my business grows is video and audio editing. That's not where my time is what is best served. Like
Sure.
it's fine now at this level, it gets the job done. But as soon as resources are available, we're sending that out to somebody who can do it better, faster, more efficiently. I don't need to be doing that.
Okay.
So I definitely get that. I do want to turn our attention though to two things that I think are big, huge time sucks and people would be served, and that's email and social media. The
Right
smartest thing I ever did
on.
7 years ago, I turned off all notifications on my phone. I
Excellent.
haven't had notifications on in years. It's life changing. It gives me the opportunity to engage with platforms as I would like to. I would like to, not when it's demanded of me by other people or by a push notification or whatever have you. Um, I tend to keep my email box without any emails. Just I don't let it pile up because I get literally hundreds of emails a day. I don't let it pile up. I keep it, curated down and just to the stuff that requires my attention so we can move on to other things. Um, and I think that is genuinely life changing. What is your advice on those things?
Oh, I agree with both of them. I would say notifications need to be turned off immediately, unless your job is outward facing customer service, where responding to pings and beeps and chirps is your call to action. Like there's somebody needs your attention. If that is not the nature of your job, it is not. You don't need anything beeping or chirping at you, other than perhaps an alarm clock if you like that, right? Something that's going to tell you that it's time for you to shift from one task to another. Otherwise, all of that stuff it should be turned off immediately. I'm completely on board with that. And as far as
Yeah.
email goes, it's the same thing. I mean, everything that can be automated should be. So if any of the listeners are not using rules or filters, I mean, the platforms call it, it's the same functionality. Some platforms
Right.
call it rules, some platforms call it filters. It's just pre-sorting emails before they land in your inbox and choosing whether that's a domain, a global domain, or a particular email address, a keyword that is going to allow you to pre-sort emails and so that they land into subfolders before they even get into your inbox, so that your inbox is really as clean as it can be. I personally I'm not striving for inbox zero. I don't feel like I need to get rid of all the emails. They go over time. They disappear over time, meaning they get thrown away, they get answered, they get filed. But again, email is not how I create revenue inside my business. It's correspondence, and so I check email 2 or 3 times a day maximum, and otherwise we lived for however many years, maybe 100 years, with a postal carrier showing up once a day with whatever they were bringing, and we responded in time, and nobody died. And I'm not a brain surgeon. If you were writing to me with something as critical as surgery, email would not be the way to do it. Texting me or calling me, some way that is far more immediate, would be the best way to reach me if you needed my attention quickly. Right?
Yeah.
Assuming that it's going to make it through all the spam filters and show up in my inbox in a timely fashion is misguided at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think your relationship to email is definitely profession dependent. In my world, email is money because people will send in, I get content from contributors, I get content from third-party businesses. If I have new people contacting me to work with me, it's usually over email. So my inbox is dollars.
Yeah,
So I'm definitely on email more, but I do this weird thing. I don't keep my email app open.
right. Nor do I.
I go through the emails, it's done, I close it, I go do things, I return to it later and then deal with that then. Because
Yeah.
I agree with you. If someone requires my attention at that level of immediacy, email is too slow. It's a great asymmetrical communications platform, which is why we still use it. It's a 50-year-old technology we still
Right.
use every day. Of tech, email is the one that has endured. Things have come and gone, email is still here. But in terms of immediacy, phone is way faster.
Yeah.
Way faster.
Yeah, and I do
And
the same thing that you do. The email app is not running in the background. I'm not saving any time. And that's a story that we might have is right. It's saving time because it's constantly pulling down new messages, but it's not necessary. It happens quick enough and it doesn't, I get more benefit out of the email program being closed and put away than I would ever gain from it checking in the background and refreshing itself. It's not necessary.
yes, no, I totally agree. So, having kind of talked about all this and everything, how did you get into this stuff of organization and time management and all this type of thing? How did you get into writing about this?
So, well, 27 years ago, I was laid off from a theater that I was running in Seattle, Washington. And I came back east to co-produce an award ceremony at the Kennedy Center. And one of our awardees was a Nobel Peace Prize winner based in New York. So I went to his office to get some photographs so I could put together a slideshow for when he was going to get his award. The process of going through his files, which were pretty messy, he and his wife asked me if I would like to organize their photographs for them. I said, that would be a tremendous honor. I would love to do that for you. So we made a date for me to go to work, which happened to be December 20th, 1996. And the day before I was supposed to go to work, their assistant called up and said, something unexpected has happened. We need to reschedule. Let's do it in January. We picked a date in January. And January rolled around, phone call, we need to reschedule. Booked a date for February. February, same thing happened, booked a date for March. In March, the phone rang and they said, when we're ready to proceed, we'll get back in touch with you. So I never went to work for them, but I told every person I met, I've got this amazing gig. I'm going to create a comprehensive photographic archive for a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Yeah. That led to a friend to refer me to her accountant who needed a filing system. I built that filing system for her. Then she started referring her clients to me. So people would show up literally on my doorstep with a duffel bag full of receipts saying, I haven't filed my taxes in 5 years. There's letters in here from the IRS. I'm freaked. I can't even open them. I don't want to go to jail and I'm completely immobilized. Can you take all of this stuff and make sense out of it before something really bad happens? So I would organize the papers, the receipts, all of that stuff for them. I'd put it in QuickBooks. I'd give it to the accountant. The accountant would file their taxes. And they would say, oh my God, you're amazing. You saved my life. You're a genius. They would tell all their friends, you'll never believe I gave this guy a pile of garbage. He turned it into my tax returns. He's brilliant. And they would say, who is this guy? I need somebody just like that. And that was how this practice began. I was still doing freelance producing and directing in New York. And this work just kept coming and coming until I finally made a decision to put theater production work on the side and do this work full time, and published my first book in 2008, 2010 with Penguin Random House. It was Penguin then. And then, that led to more speaking, teaching. And this is my third book, but my second really big book. The middle book was really The Most Organized Man in America's Guide to Moving. So it's a short little Kindle single, which is really just a checklist for people who are moving house or moving office and want to know what to do when methodically. So I created a book with instructions and built around a checklist from 3 months before you move until 1 week after you move, how to pack up and then unpack and set everything back up so that it all makes sense and you don't waste any time.
Yeah, that I did a best advice. I have a ongoing column that I call Best Advice, and I did one on moving because I have moved almost every 2 years of my entire adult life.
Wow.
Because I'm a full-time working artist, so we're on the move, and I've moved cross country 3 times. So I've done Denver to Seattle, Seattle to Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. back to Seattle. And I definitely, so I did this whole post about moving and how to do that while having done it so many times, and kind of okay, if you don't have money and need to leave quickly, here's what to do. If you have some money and some time, here's what to do. If you have both time and money, then Yeah, literally get some nice plastic bins, hire movers, it'll change your life. The first time I ever had movers, I was just moving across town. I had them for 4 hours, and they literally got it all out of the house in the truck to the new apartment. They placed all the furniture and were doing some unpacking when the clock finally expired. Like, I was back up and like running in like 3 days. It was so nice. I'm kind of like, I don't think I can ever do this by myself ever again.
Yeah.
Like,
I
it was
mean,
life changing.
wherever you are in the both the money spectrum and then the kind of the age spectrum where your friends no longer want to be tapped to like come help me move, right? I
Oh,
mean, I think
all my friends were all in our late 30s and 40s. We have back issues. We're buying Tylenol in bulk. We don't have the physical oompa to do that anymore. It's
yeah,
not a thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're more likely to start a GoFundMe so that they can give you $50 and you can hire a mover than they were like, I don't want to show up at 8 o'clock and load a U-Haul with you. I love you, not interested.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's very true. Yeah, exactly. I would like it would be like let me just send around my Venmo. You can check, donations accepted. Yeah, no, it is so true. It's just it's a lot. It's a lot. So that's very interesting. So you kind of went from producing theater to producing people's lives in a weird
Exactly.
way.
Yeah. Solving problems. I mean, they were, and the biggest shift probably was the absence of metaphor. When making a play, I'm telling a story in the hopes that you connect the dots and make sense, right? That the journey, the 2 hours or 3 hours that we're together in a dark room, there's a through line that makes sense, and you can connect the dots and have an epiphany, possibly some catharsis at the end of the experience. Light bulb goes on, you implement hopefully and make some shifts personally. And the biggest difference between that work and this work is just the direct transmission, that we've removed the metaphor, so I'm no longer speaking in code. I'm actually directing you, do this, then do this, then do this. Try these behaviors on, try these mindset shifts on, see how they work. If they don't work, jettison them. But if they just stay as a static idea and never get implemented, we have no sense of whether it actually works or doesn't work for you.
Yeah, that is sad but true. I wish some of this stuff, as an autistic person, I wish much of this stuff was just standardized.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish it wasn't so individual. Um, I wish it was just kind of like this is, we have refined the system and it works this way, so just do this thing and all will be well, sort of thing.
Well,
Um,
I did create the organizational triangle for that reason, right? Which, and again,
hmm,
how you interpret it or how you implement it is completely up to you. But one home for everything, and
hmm.
like with like is how you get organized. Something in, something out is how you stay organized. So if everything has one home and only one home, and all like objects live together, you actually are organized. You might have more things than you need, but if everything has a home, your keys have a home, my keys have a home, they're only ever going to be one of two places: in their home or in our hand being used to unlock something. And if all like objects live together, not most of them, but all of them, we're not scrambling around trying to find the Phillips head screwdriver because it's not in the toolbox with all of the other tools and it's in the junk drawer in the kitchen, right? If it lives with its siblings, then you only have to go one place and you'll find everything that has something in common in that one place. So,
Yes, so the last 3 years I've been living in a very small apartment. It's basically a very fancy hotel room, in a
mm-hmm.
historic building in downtown Seattle. And I tell people, I said the key, nothing will force you to be highly organized and keep things together in its space, in its home, than small space living.
True.
Nothing. My ex-girlfriend really struggles here because she's like, I'm like, everything I have spent the last optimizing where everything is, why it is where it is, all this type of thing, and we've like allotted that small postage stamp of space for that, and she just like so struggles because it's just like, this doesn't make any sense. Why does it have to be this way? You don't have cabinets, you don't have counter space, you don't have anything, and it's kind of like, Well, yes and no. Like the stove also serves as ad hoc counter space a lot. I have a little cover for that. All this type of thing. Like it's like it, yeah, that's like no, I don't like no, I don't have a huge 3,000 square foot house where the mess can just kind of populate itself.
Sure.
But if you work smart and use what you've got, then it's not so bad, sort of thing.
Yeah. And the
Um,
only adjustment I would suggest, if I
yeah,
may, is it's your system. If she were living with you and she, if you were sharing the space in a let's say a permanent way, not permanent about duration as much as if this were her home too, her stake in where is the home for the thing that we put on top of the stove to make it a countertop, right? To make it a
yeah.
cutting board or whatever. Giving her some buy-in about where that home would be would allow her to so it's not you imposing this is where I park it, right? This I've determined where the home for each thing is. Anytime you share space with another person, the more they have a stake in deciding where the one home is, the more likely it is that there won't be that dissonance or that resistance to that's not where I would put it. Understandable. It might not be where you would put it. You're in my space, so I get to decide. If we're living together, we can decide together where would be the best place to put the cutting board then. Like where would you put it? Where would I put it? What's the compromise that makes sense to both of us so that neither of us are struggling to remember where did we put that cutting board?
No, we actually have lived together before. And ironically, not much space more than this. We rented a quarter of a farmhouse. And I moved in before her, like by like a few days. And so I was still in the process of like moving and putting stuff together and all this type of thing. And that was every conversation. Okay, this is how I would do this, but what works for you? I think this makes sense over here. Do you care? Do you have an opinion? And sometimes and sometimes I think it's important to be flexible because sometimes you get into a space kind of like, oh, everything is what it is. And then you start using it and find out none of this
Not the right
works.
place. Yeah.
Not the right, and then the great, that's why I love command strips and things because then you can quickly reorganize and move things around and all that sort of thing, and it's most essential.
Yeah.
And also sometimes it depends on who uses what part of the house.
Totally.
When her and I lived together, I did the cooking, so the kitchen was organized the way I liked because I was the one who was going to use it the most.
Right.
Conversely, she tended to do laundry, so I didn't touch anything with that. However she wanted it, that was great. Do what you want, babe. Like I don't go in there. Like that's fine. You do all of that. And so yeah, it is definitely with two people a conversation, and I think it is, difficult to kind of get all that stuff together in all the right places and all the right things. But I think it is a bit of a conversation. But I think
Well, I would
having a
also
home for
say,
everything is good. That's
yeah,
good.
I would also say the flexibility, as you pointed out, that in practical application, if after you've been doing something a particular way for a week or two, or maybe even a month, and you're discovering this doesn't feel right, everybody should feel empowered to like, oh, well, that's not the right home for the keys in this space. I should move the hook, or I should put a dish someplace else so that it actually matches up with where I feel I want to put it. So that you're not, again, you're not fighting with yourself about some rigid interpretation of, I determined it once, this must be where it must stay for all time, as opposed to, well, I don't really love it here, and I would be much more inclined to find it and know where it is if I moved it 2 feet to the left, or hung it 2 feet higher on the wall, or whatever it might be. That
Yeah.
people need to know that it's their spaces, and they're not obligated to keep it the way that it is. It's not like, oh, that's the way we've always done it. You bend it to serve yourself so that you can find what you're looking for when you need it.
No, I mean, I have a bunch of hanging things in the kitchen for like long cleaning products because there's kind of nowhere else for them to live because I don't have a closet like that here. My old apartment that I had before I moved to the east had this huge closet by the doorway that was great for all that stuff.
Sure.
In fact, I almost want to move back into that building because there was so much closet space. And but I have it all hanging in the kitchen, and I got tired of. I would literally be in the kitchen, and I would like bend down to get something, and I would knock stuff off the wall. And so I'm kind of like, something about this isn't working. So I'm 6 foot and have a step ladder. So I just took all the hooks and raised them another 2 feet because I have tall ceilings. These are
Yep.
13-foot cathedral ceilings. And then all of a sudden my ass wasn't bumping into them and I didn't have that problem anymore. Problem solved. Like, again, this is why we love command strips and command hooks, because we
Yes.
can move them quickly.
Yes.
Yes, no, that is so true. So I want to know, in terms of like your, before you got into doing this organization thing, like how did you discover these things and these methods? Like, how did you get into, I mean, I understand how you got into it. You had all these people kind of galvanized around you, but like in terms of coming up with all these methods and thoughts and organizing your own life, how did that, like, have you always been, I guess the question is, have you always been this way, or was there a messy precursor that then caused the big bang that caused you to be organized?
Not that. I would say that running nonprofit arts organizations definitely forced me to solve problems, right? I mean, I like puzzles. I like solving problems. I used to think of making plays as, I mean, not puzzles or problems to be solved as much as we're collaborating and somebody is going to be responsible for coordinating all of these different elements, right? I mean, coordinating with a lighting designer and a costume designer and a sound designer and a set designer and actors, and if there's a living playwright, all of those things, not to mention the front of house stuff. So the having a mind that could synthesize all of those different things and hold them in track is a skill that I think I have some natural ability with, that then I developed those skills as well. I will tell you that as a child, the only things that I was organized about were my Matchbox cars and my baseball card collection. You can't really trade baseball cards if you don't know what you have. And it was the same thing with the Matchbox cars. For me, you know, I would get a Matchbox car as a reward for like a straight A report card or something, or for a birthday present. So I certainly didn't want a car that I already had. I wanted a new car. And if I didn't know what I already owned, it would be hard to direct my parents to say, well, I don't need that ambulance. I need the ambulance that has, you know, the UK ambulance that has the suicide doors on it. That's the one that I need because I already have the United States ambulance. So those were the two things that mattered to me. Those were the two things that I paid attention to. I would take off my clothes and I would drop them on the floor, and my mother would constantly harangue me to just, we had a laundry chute. It was not far. It was outside my bedroom, to just open the laundry chute and drop the dirty clothes down there. There was no hamper in my room. There was a laundry chute. And that was a constant struggle for her of just pick up after yourself. It's not a big deal. It wasn't aligned with my values. It didn't matter. And the clothes somehow magically showed up clean and in my bedroom. So I wasn't involved in that process until when I became older, and I was involved in the process. But so what I did learn was that the things that are aligned with our values are relatively easy for us to pay attention to because they are important to us. Naturally, we can just say naturally, or, you know, intuitively, those are the things that we gravitate towards. The other stuff is learned behavior. And so it's been a process of, and then when I was working with private clients, I would start to recognize patterns of how they would interact with their things, the stories they would tell themselves about why this wasn't possible. And I would think, well, but that's a mindset. You have a story that says it's not possible. If we got rid of that story, it probably would be possible. What if we just alter that and see what happens? Particularly if they were things that I could see in my own life that I didn't struggle with. Other things that I did struggle with, I started to recognize that that was probably more often than not a mindset challenge for myself as well. Resistance to invoicing clients in the very beginning, right? Feeling uncomfortable, even though I knew that I was providing a service, I still felt uncomfortable having to then ask to get paid for that service. that was a muscle I had to develop. Figuring out where to put the shoes in the closet or to hang up sweaters or things like that, that came relatively easy to me. It's also objectively, because it wasn't my stuff, it was relatively easy to figure out the puzzle of where do we have enough space for this entire collection of things. And I don't mean a collection like stamps or, coins,
Right.
but again, the one home for everything and like with like. If what we're trying to store in a kitchen is 14 knives, where is there enough room for 14 knives as opposed to only 9 knives?
Yes. Yes, I
And if
definitely
there's
see
only
that.
room for 9 knives, maybe 4 of them will leave, right? I mean, that becomes the
Yeah.
choice is if we only have room for 9 where you want them to go, 4 of them have to go because we have too many right now. Or
Yes.
we
Well,
relocate them and then we put them in a bigger drawer and then you can have them. But that might mean now that the cooking utensils get displaced because the bigger drawer was really for the spatulas and the spoons and the ladles and all of those things.
yes. No, I think I think the purging aspect, I think, is underappreciated. Um, and that's why I tell people, I said, here's the thing about moving. Moving is such a great time to get rid of stuff. Why pay
The
to
best
schlep it if
time.
you don't have to? Every time I move, I look at everything and be like, because and this still, even though I purge every single time, I remember I got the rest of my stuff back from West Virginia because I had to have it brought across the country. And I was unpacking some of this and be kind of like, why did I just pay $1,500 to move this across the country? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, my last that move was after a breakup. It happened very quickly. I literally packed up my whole life and left in 3 days. So I didn't have time to do a lot of it. I'm like, I feel like I went through all the boxes in the storage unit. I had my whole life spread out in the parking lot. And why did I pay to have some of this stuff moved? So this time I have time. I'm moving in August. It's May. Stuff is already starting to go. I've got a pile over this shoulder that people or listener can see. It's there because that stuff that's going. It ain't coming with us. It
Perfect.
won't. Yes, it's not going to leave this. It's the only place it's going to go after this address is the Goodwill.
Yeah.
So, yes, that is absolutely most essential. Well, this has been fascinating, and I feel like we're going to help everybody get organized. So,
Yeah.
I think this has been lovely, absolutely lovely. So, why don't you let us know where we can buy the book, where we can find you online, and learn more about you?
Sure. So andrewmellen.com. Mellen is spelled Mellen. So that's my website. You can find the book Calling Bullshit on Busy on all of the places books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, at your local independent bookstore. You can go to cbobbook.com, C as in calling, BOB, bullshit on busy, cbobbook.com, and all the links of where the book is available there. You can follow me on Goodreads, and there's you can connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm on Twitter too, but Twitter is its own thing right now. So
Yes,
so
good.
I tend to spend most of my time on either Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and I'm all of those places. And I'd love to support anyone in getting and staying organized and getting more time back into the day. So
Definitely.
there's enough things that legitimately demand our attention. Eliminating all of it's the same thing that you're doing around your move, right? We just want to cull all those things off of our to-do list that really don't have any value. They just pester us of like, oh, I could be doing this, but you don't really want to. So you'd feel so much better if you just cross them off your list, delegate them if they do need to be done. They just don't need to be done by you. But instead of living in that place of there's just too much to do and not enough time to do it all, wouldn't it be great if we could adjust your expectations down so there is a lot to do and I have enough time to do the things that actually matter to me, and the rest of the stuff is just noise. I can let it go.
Yeah, I think there's a pressure to do the things do the things that we feel we should be doing, rather than just the things that we need to do or want to do.
Yep.
And I think and this is no is a complete sentence. Like
Right on.
that's, and I think there's a lot of people, and it was something I had to learn how to do. Did not come naturally to me.
No.
Because I, was a natural born people pleaser, and with the trauma of autism, it's really easy for us to not have boundaries and all this type of thing. And it is a skill, but especially if you are running your own business, executive of an organization, learning how to say no is about the best thing that you can do, especially if you're responsible not just for your own personal resources, but the resources of a team, other people, an organization. I mean, I've sat in organizations where the board comes along and is like, we want to do A, B, C, D, L, M, N, O, P. And I'm like, well, you have enough staff for A and maybe B. C's not going to happen, much less LMNOP. And then they end up throwing it all in there anyway. And then they come back a year later and wonder why none of it's done. This launch didn't go well, all this type of thing. It's like, I told you, you had enough staff for A and B, because nobody's willing to say, no, we can't take that on right now. We can't do that. We have to save that for later, or we need to do that to make the money to hire the staff to take that on. There's a process to that sort of thing. So yes. I think that's very important.
In closing, I'll just share with you something
this is the world's worst outro, but please go ahead.
A friend of mine shared with me that I've incorporated into the book, and that is that the only thing better than good news is bad news fast. If the answer is no, tell me no now. Don't tell me you're going to get back to me in 48 hours. Because I think in those 48 hours, you're trying to make something happen. You think if we burn through 48 hours, when I tell you no, it'll soften the blow. You won't be so disappointed because you had time to get used to the possibility that no might be coming. Just tell me no. I'll go find the yes. Don't waste 48 of my hours because I'm like, I'm thinking, that something's going to happen. You're going to make it work. It's just better. Tell me now. I'll get on with my life. I can handle the no.
Yes, that's one of the things I miss from working in television, is that it's a media like that is a very fast moving industry. People say yes, they say no. Everyone's very decisive. And I'm do not work in an industry now where that is the case. I work in writing and publishing where no takes months. I waited 6 months for Harvard to say, no, we're not giving you a Radcliffe Fellowship this year. And at the end, I'm like, I don't even care if I get it. I just want, because it was like, am I going to move to Massachusetts or stay here? Like, I just want to know where I'm going. So please just tell me yes or no. And I miss that from television, because publishing is the exact opposite. You'll wait 6 months for them to say no, thank you.
Yeah.
It's absolutely maddening. Well, Andrew Mellen, you're absolutely delightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter. And we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast.